welcome to the Canadian Wood Pallet and Container Association Virtual Safety Group and the webinar on ergonomics. The presentation will be done by Brian Izard. I'm the General Manager of the association, and what entitles me to give this presentation is I have a degree in occupational health and safety and 30 years experience on the topic of ergonomics. Just to go over the agenda, I want to talk a little bit about the virtual safety group, a reminder of our legal responsibilities for employers, a review of what a safe work procedure is. We'll talk a little bit about what exactly musculoskeletal disorders are, how to recognize their symptoms, common hazards, and prevention techniques. And then we'll finish off by reminding you where you can find these procedures on the CWPCA website. So first of all, a review topic. Who can give this type of training? Well, you know, I've identified my qualifications that entitles me to give this training. In your own workplaces, what you want to remind yourself is that the person that does the training by definition has to be competent, and what defines competency is you're qualified through knowledge, training, experience from the work itself. You're aware of the safety hazards involved in the work, and that you've got a good understanding of the regulations surrounding ergonomics in the workplace. And where do you find those? Typically, ergonomics are found in the general duty clause of all occupational health and safety legislation across the various provinces in Canada. And those are highlighted as responsibility for the employer to keep the hazard or the workplace hazard-free, to recognize hazards in the workplace that could cause potentially death or serious harm, and to make employees aware of methods to correct the hazards. So once again, it's important that only competent people do this training, and if you're looking for competent people, those are typically supervisors. They could be members of your health and safety committees that have had supplemental training on the issue, or in many cases you would bring in an outside consultant to assist in that formal training. So, what training tools are we providing our members with? There are three types of tools that we're providing you with. We've developed safe work practices, or in some cases safety standards, developed by the Workplace Safety and Prevention Association, which is a professional body. So that's written. We've established customized training presentations in a PowerPoint format that you can use once you've customized them to your particular workplace, that you can review over a computer on a screen with your employees, either an orientation training or refresher training. And we have a records retention program where we identify who's been training and the dates and the type of training being given. And that's done in case you're required or you're requested to provide that information to a regulatory authority. So what exactly is ergonomic safety training? What will this course teach you? Well, it'll help you to understand the principles of ergonomics, help you to recognize the risk factors, the signs, the symptoms of musculoskeletal disorders, and what are MSDSs? Well, those are what are causing about 40% of the accidents and injuries that we have in Canada in our industry. And this is typically what a physician would write on a note authorizing one of your employees to be off work for a couple of days. They define it as a musculoskeletal disorder, MSDS. We'll help you to understand what a program for identifying, reporting, and controlling MSDSs should be, and how to protect yourself against those injuries and reduce the risk of an MSDS. So what is ergonomics? Well, ergonomics really is the study of modifying a job to fit the capabilities of people. So over the last decades, what we've done is built machinery and procedures and tried to fit people into those types of machines. And a good example is in pallet repair is providing pallets to an employee stacked 15 high and expecting that employee to pull down those pallets and process those stacks of 15 high. And what we know over time is that at 15 high, you're going to get some back injuries. What can we do about it? Well, we can modify the workstation and allow the employee to work at a reduced height, let's say a stack of 10, or to provide an assistive device, as you see in that bottom right-hand corner, which is a skyhook. And a skyhook is a tool developed in our industry and used throughout North America to prevent MSDSs in sortation of pallets. It's about reducing the incidence of these types of injuries, which are typically caused by repetitive reaching, forceful exertions, repetitive bending and lifting, or working on vibrating equipment. An example of vibrating equipment would be, for example, a sawzall or nail gun. It's about engineering controls, putting in controls on equipment to prevent these type of injuries. It's about safe work practices where we look at the job and design procedures around it. These are typically referred to as safe work practices or job safety assessments in order to prevent injury to an employee, and about personal protective equipment. An example of that would be anti-shock gloves to somebody operating a sawzall or a nail gun, or additional cushioning in the feet to prevent lower back strain. So, just a brief overview of what a MSDS looks like, and typically these refer to disorders of the body's soft tissues, and they're manifested by back pain, and these are terms typically you'd see on a doctor's note. Back pain, muscle strain, tendinitis, which is the irritation of tendons that join the muscle to the bone. Carpal tunnel syndrome, you often hear this or see this with people that are using computers extensively or using nail guns extensively, where the nerve in the palm of the hand becomes compressed. Rotator cuff syndrome, this is injuries to muscles and tendons around the shoulder joints, quite typical in sports. Tennis elbow, which is elbow pain caused by repetitive action. Tensivitis, which is trigger finger or shoulder pain, and they're just some examples of where these injuries manifest themselves in the body. Symptoms, well, quite often somebody that's suffering from a musculoskeletal disorder will feel pain in the back and the shoulders and the neck, tightness or discomfort, stiffness, soreness, burning in the hands. Sometimes it's defined as tingling or coldness or numbness in the hands. It's clumsiness. If you're operating a nail gun and you have white finger or trigger finger, it's that you can't get the right index finger to press the trigger on the gun, that your other fingers on your hand are not working in proper coordination with the thumb or the index finger. It's the type of severe pain that wakes you up at night, and it's a feeling that you constantly have to massage your hands and wrists. So the key point is that when you recognize this type of pain, and I'll emphasize this throughout the conversation, is that you do something about it. Either you rotate your position, you do some stretching exercises. The concept of working through the pain, which is kind of a hockey or football terminology, isn't a particularly good idea when dealing with these type of injuries, because working through the pain tends to aggravate the injury. So the training to your employees should say that if you are suffering from this pain, report to your supervisor and do something about it. We'll talk about that later. So common ergonomic risk factors. You see a picture of a fella here sorting pallets by himself. It's really the excessive force, awkward or strained posture, repetition or lack of rest. That's what we're talking about. Those are the main risk factors. And when these risk factors combine in the workplace, there's a chance of the injury occurring. And typically these are lifting pallets with a bent back, and this is really key, and this is where a lot of injuries occur. It's the twisting of the back when you're turning, so that if you're not moving your feet when you're turning with your arms or your shoulders supporting a pallet or a piece of heavy equipment, that's exactly where you're going to get injuries in the lower back. So the training that we're providing our employees should be that when we're turning while we're lifting something, that we have to move our feet with it. We'll talk a little more about that, but this is really important at this juncture to understand where and how people get hurt. They get hurt when they're lifting with a bent back, and they get hurt when they're twisting their back without turning their feet. It's a repetitive use of power tools, including tringers or prolonged exposure to vibration, and as I said once before, sawzalls, cutting tools, those type of things will often cause vibration in the hand that moves up through the elbow into the shoulder and the neck. It's working in improper height surfaces, such as working off a repair table. It's extreme forward reaching, so that the employee is constantly, for example, using a nail gun and reaching over the far side of a 40-inch pallet to nail the boards on, rather than being able to turn the pallet and nail right in front of them. And it's also a contact stress against hard edges. And a good example of that is often found for people that work in computers, where they have, for example, their keypad on the desk, and they've got their wrist sitting on the edge of a sharp edge of the desk. That's a common risk factor for an ergonomic type of injury. So individual work factors that cause risk: not following the proper procedures. So if you're trained to properly lift, you want to know what you can do on a personal basis is follow the procedures that you've been trained for. Take an interest in self-care. Think prevention, and that means proper sitting postures and proper lifting techniques. It also means that you have to be aware of sports injuries. So injuries that occur on the hockey rink or on the baseball diamond that then are not reported. You come into work and then you reuse those injured muscles are extreme risk factors for ergonomic injuries. It's poor physical fitness, so that certainly in our industry, being the pallet and crate manufacturing industry, this is very, very physical work. You know, you're lifting pallets, you're lifting wood, you're moving these type of materials day in, day out. You have to be in good physical condition to do it, and if you're not, you're going to present a risk to yourself. It's also about inadequate warm-up. If you think of your muscles as a cold elastic band, if you pull on that elastic band and it stretches in a cold or an unused format, it'll crack or tear. And then the proper way to begin stretching that piece of elastic is to warm it up, pull it a little bit, pull a little bit more, pull a little bit more. That's very much the analogy that I would use to using muscles. So I'm a believer in doing some stretching exercises at the start of the shift. I've in the past worked with large workforces where 5 to 10 minutes of stretching at the start of the shift has been very conducive to reducing ergonomic injuries in the workplace. And the last point is, if the individual feels pain, it's better to report it early and deal with it rather than work through it, go home, pain starts to become quite serious, and then going to the doctor. Any of the employees that I work with, I've encouraged them to, you know, if you have a problem, bring it forward and let us work on it and see what we can do about it, rather than really injure yourself and then end up going to the doctor after hours. So How do you prevent MSDSs? First area that we would look at in our facilities is look at your work surface. So the ideal work surface for assembling pallets is just below elbow height, and this permits the worker to keep his upper arms nearly vertical at his side with his elbow flexed at 90 degrees. What you see in this particular picture, although it doesn't look particularly sophisticated, is a really good best practice for preventing ergonomic injuries. The table you see in front of you is rounded so that you can get it at virtually any edge. There's no sharp edges or sharp corners that would impact the body. Also, this has got kind of a slight bevel to the top of it, which allows the worker to spin the pallet quite easily, and that prevents him from having to reach over to the far end of the pallet and nailing boards that have either come loose or need to be replaced. Furthermore, if you look at this, this is a second best practice where this individual is building a new pallet on a jig, and it's in a elevated position where the worker doesn't have to lean over on a flat surface to nail it. It's in an upright, staggered position, and in this case, this reduces significantly the amount of stress on the shoulder and back muscles. Tilted work surfaces for assembling pallets is a tried and true method of manual or reducing the stress to a worker when engaged in manual new pallet construction. Work surfaces. So most of our plants are concrete in the way the floors are built, and this can cause severe strain on the lower back, thigh muscles, if workers are spending 6-8 hours standing on this hard surface. So one of the things you can do about the work surface is two things. One is put in anti-fatigue mats at workstations, which are cushioned, and typically these are the same type of things you would see in your own home around where you're doing the dishes. So your wife has put either a rug or some kind of matting there to just cushion the soles of the feet while working at the sink. It's really no different for a workstation. These kind of cushion platforms are very helpful in reducing strain. And the other thing is looking at the type of shoes that people are using and making sure there's plenty of cushioning inside the shoes. The next area that we want to look at on how to prevent MSDS is the material handling assistive devices, and the most common of which we have is the skyhook, or another name for that are the vacuum lifts. Quite a predominant type of piece of machinery in our workplaces, and simply put, these devices assist the worker in lifting the pallets during the pallet inspection process and moving it from one stack to the other. So this does two things. One, it takes some of the strain off the shoulders and the lower back, but it also improves the productivity of the worker in processing used pallets. Another example of an assistive device is a pallet jack or a hydraulic lift table, or forklift for that matter. So, one of the things that I would encourage everybody to do is look at stack heights within the facility. My own personal opinion is anything over 10 pallets high is too high for a worker, and I would have the forklifts cut the stacks down from whatever height they are, typically 15 or 12, 10s. You'll get a good bang for your buck in doing so. Also, another example of an assistive device that you would encourage your workers to use are hand carts for moving, for example, boxes of coiled nails from pallet inventory inside the plant to the individual workstations. It's a small tool, but it helps reduce the potential incidence of an injury. Other examples are tool supports or tool balancers. So in the picture you see somebody operating a device where they're prying up a board, but the use of nail guns are a particularly sensitive issue in our workplace, and I think the guidance would be that if you have tools weighing over 8.5 pounds each, you would employ a tool balancer, and anything under that, you're fine to just leave the tool as is. This is something you want to take up with your suppliers of nail guns, in that you want to provide them with the tool that can do the job, but of course you want them to provide the tool that's lightest that can do the job. The next opportunity to reduce MSDSs are around job rotation. So this is a challenge in our industry where we typically don't do a lot of this, but in my own personal experience, this is probably one of the better tools that we have to increase job satisfaction and reduce the incidence of injuries caused by excessive repetition. So this can be done in several ways. It can be done simply as have somebody switch from sortation to repair midway through the day, have people switch out from repair onto forklift drivers if that's possible. But it's the concept of rotating the type of muscles that you're using in the workstation in order to give some of the muscles a rest, and that's what prevents potential injuries to the body. So how to prevent MSDSs? Once again, I'm going to re-emphasize that lifting and carrying in our industry is something to pay particular attention to, and that proper training should be given to all employees when they start work with your company on the proper technique to lift, and that means bending at the knees, lifting with your hands, keeping the weight close to your body, and then lifting with your legs into an upright position. You would never bend at the waist and lift with your shoulders with a bent waist. That's just a recipe for disaster. Every time that you turn, you have to emphasize to the employees that they have to turn with their feet. If they turn without moving their feet, in other words, they're turning their spine, that's a recipe for a serious potential injury in the lower back. So that's simple training that's reinforced throughout the year, either refresher training, and it's something that your supervisors or members of your health and safety committee are observing, is really the starting point for preventing those type of injuries in the workplace. Wherever possible, you encourage your workers to utilize the material handling devices that have been provided, and those examples once again are assistive lifting devices such as the vacuum lifts or the sky hooks, but also it's the use of pallet jacks or forklifts to move stacks of pallets, conveying equipment if you have it, either roll conveyors on the floor or motorized conveying equipment to move stacks of pallets through the plant. And it ranges down to just some very small devices like hand trucks or hand carts to move nails or scrap metal around the workplace. And lastly, it's about organizing your work processes to ensure that heavy material handling is removed from the workplace. And a good example of that would be waste removal. So in the past, we saw numerous people letting boards at a repair table fall to the floor, and then at the end of the shift, bending down, picking up the boards, and restacking them or throwing into a waste hopper, where the provision of a new process that has the waste hopper positioned either at the workstation or on a belt that transfers it to a larger waste hopper is a good example of reorganizing the workplace to take manual lifting out of the workplace. Okay, so a couple ideas around how to prevent MSDSs. One is around tool design. So we saw earlier an individual just prying the boards up with a simple pry bar, and what you see in front of you is a custom designed tool that's built on some ergonomic principles which prevent some of the heavy strain that occurs on the wrist by doing the job properly. The second thing that I make sure all our facilities, all the facilities I was involved in, had was ample supply of picaroon or line jam clearing tools around stackers, conveyors, and cutting lines. And what I emphasize to all workers is that they would never use their hands, and the reason for that, just from an ergonomics perspective, is that when you're clearing a line jam, if you use your hands, usually when you free the jam, the pallet is then pulled free by the force behind it, whether it's a set of drive chain or rollers, and that pulling action can cause significant strain on the back and the shoulder. Whereas if a tool is used, such as a pike or something like that, there's significantly less strain on the shoulder, and of course you can drop the tool if need be, or let it slide through your hands as the pallet or whatever becomes free. In terms of injury management, so this happens. This is the process of making sure that the injuries don't occur in your workplace through administrative controls. Some of the things that you can look at is having somebody, either an ergonomist or a healthcare practitioner who has some training in this issue, to look at your MSDS or MSDS hazards in the workplace. So they would come in, go through your various work processes, consider them in the light of local regulatory standards, and then provide either something called a job safety assessment, a JSA, or physical demands analysis, a PDA, that would then outline how the job is to be done. The next step is to train all your workers to report incidents of severe pain and teach them how to recognize it, and then train your supervisors on how to deal with it. So, for example, if somebody says, "Look, I've got some severe lower pain in my, or some severe pain in my lower back. I don't know what to deal with it, but it hurts." The supervisor says, what he doesn't say is, "Go back to work, and you've only got 4 hours left in your shift." That's not the proper response. The response is, let's take 10 or 15 minutes and see if you can rest up a bit. We can ice it down with a cold pack. We can try a different job for a little while and see how that works. It's developing a response to the incident that prevents the incident from worsening. It's encouraging employees to report and participate in early intervention, and of course, obviously the concern is, well, in this type of training, will I just be asking more people to report these type of incidents? That hasn't been my experience. My experience is most people that are working want to do their job and do their job safely, and that the only time that they're going to come to you is when something is hurting. And that's exactly what you want them to do. Let them come to you, tell you that they're hurting, and deal with it before it becomes something more serious. Also, I'd encourage each facility to make sure that you have at least one person, could be an office worker or a joint health and safety person or yourself or a supervisor, that really is the coordinator, that understands what some of the terminology is and can give advice on these particular issues. Once again, we talked about providing proper training on the right way to do work within your workplace, and to have these discussed within the context of your Joint Health and Safety Committee, and identify potential parts of the workplace where these are causing problems. I know in my own situation, waste removal was the source of numerous injuries, and we really required the efforts of the Joint Health and Safety Committee to come up with strategies around how to handle wood waste properly and reduce the incidence of MSDSs in handling waste wood. Last part of any training program involves a practical competency assessment. So this is a sample, but this is usually done at the end of the training, where you would ask, and this can be done on an individual basis or on a team basis, but you'd ask them questions to see if they understood the terminology. You'd ask for practical demonstrations of proper lifting techniques, how to recognize hazards in the workplace. Number 4, identify ways of personally protecting yourself, proper use of tools, and materially handling aids. This isn't meant to be exhaustive, and it can be done in a written format. Although in my experience, it's better to walk people through these, especially with some of the challenges we have with language in the workplace currently. But this is the final step of a training program, which is review, competency assessment, where the supervisor is trying to evaluate whether the material that he's just provided to the workers has been understood. So that's the summary of our safe work training on ergonomics. The entire presentation plus the standard plus the training format documentation will be posted to the CWPCA website, and I encourage you all to work on this initiative in the months to come. As I said earlier, it represents fully 40% of the incidents that are occurring in our workplace in terms of reportable injuries for the last 3 years. Thank you for attending, and once again, all the best.